Hi, everyone. I wanted to tell you a little bit more about my new book, The Audacity of Freedom. What does the word audacity mean? Well, one definition is it means the bold disregard of normal restraints. The bold disregard of normal restraints. So, in the word audacity itself is already freedom. What are the restraints that we are normally under? In the context of the work that I do and the work that many people who I meet are interested in, which is the work of the message of freedom, basically. One of the main constraints or restraints is the fact that we are deeply conditioned to have a sense of unworthiness, and that coming to know our essential nature or coming to know freedom is not really for us. And it's very evident in our religions by placing people like Jesus or the Buddha or Ramana Maharshi in a position that's so incredibly above who we are that we can never aspire to be like that. This is simply a very clever ploy of ego in the guise of religion and followers of these deities, employed to keep ego alive forever. And we can see that easily within our own being, actually. So I say that's true for everyone because our culture has really beaten that into our heads. So the word audacity for me means that to have the courage or the nerve or the freedom in itself to disregard all of that propaganda and really come to know for oneself the truth of their own essential nature. And so that's what my work is about. And it's also what all of my books are about. Some of you may know that I've had three previous books to this one. Liberation Is, The Way of Freedom, and Blown Wide Open. And all three of those books are or were transcribed from conversations I had with people over the years of doing this work. And then, of course, they were edited and put in a presentable form to share the message itself of freedom. They weren't freshly written or a story or anything like that. But my new book, The Audacity of Freedom, is a story. It's the story of my own path of seeking, and actually begins early in my childhood, as all of our paths begin. So this book is different in that it's a story that I actually sat down and wrote. And while it's all based on my own true experiences, it was a composition, a writing project for me, which was a great new challenge for me at the time. But it's not just a story. For me, just telling my story wouldn't be very interesting. What's more interesting for me is, which is the only thing that's interesting for me, is the handing over the message of freedom. So, you know, the way I see what I do is that I don't, certainly not a guru, and I don't really consider myself a teacher either. I was shown a message, I think, close to 20 years ago, and that message has been burning a hole in my pocket for all of these years. And so I started 12 years ago sharing it. And now when I work with people, I just say, here's this message. It's your message. Have this message. And so within the telling of the story and the experiences that I went through is the message itself. You can find out the sources of how I share, why I share, and you can also hopefully get the message of freedom yourself while reading. So the book is not just a story of my path, but it's also is the message is inherent within the story as well. I start off in the book in my early childhood, how I grew up, and I share a bit about being really disillusioned with both the religion. I was brought up a Christian, and then school as well. I found nothing of value really in either. I found them both to be repressive and uninteresting for me. I didn't see anything in there. And it wasn't until I discovered music, guitar, when I was at the age of 12, and Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles and all of that amazing music back then, that my life seemed to have now found something that was elevated, that gave me some sense of purpose. And so I pursued the path of music and also drawing. I used to draw a lot when I was young. Still, I do a little bit, but not so much. And into my 20s, came a point where I put my foot down and said, "No, I'm going to really make it in rock and roll." And so I got some bands together, and I had some nominal success and toured and made albums and all of that stuff. But at the same time, I was taking drugs because for me, it wasn't that I was depressed or anything like that. It's just that I found life to be kind of boring, actually. That's why I wanted excitement in music, and I wanted an elevated sense of, or a heightened experience of life in these ways. And drugs gave me that as well. So those two played hand in hand, rock and roll lifestyle. And that was all fine and well until my late 30s when it really reached an apex. And I won't go into the whole story here, but there was a point when I was 39 that I had overdone my drug use. And it brought me to my knees, literally brought me to my knees, and in a plea for help. And in that moment, everything changed in my life. And I was cast on the path of spiritual seeking. And I never looked back from there. And so the book does speak about those early days, but the bulk of the book is the next 8 years of my, seeking path and everything that happened during that time until I met my last teacher. And I met many teachers and gurus, and I lived with gurus in India, and I had all these experiences and meditated, I don't know how many thousands of hours, and read every book and traveled everywhere. I did all of that stuff, which is all, I talk a lot about that in the book, until I met my last teacher who, when I was ready, could show me a very simple message. And then all of that was finished. And then life became very normal, ordinary, and what I call freedom now. So I thought maybe I would read another brief extract from the book. This excerpt is called The Well Dream. This happened while I was living here in Tiruvannamalai with an Indian guru master named Shiva Shakti. I lived in the room next to hers for a year, and I meditated a lot, and a lot of wild things were happening as well at the time. And then one night I had this dream. In October, I had another powerful dream, this one prophetic. In this dream, I had a companion. He'd been with me since the very beginning of my life. He had dark hair, green eyes, was my exact height, etc. He was my doppelganger, and we were never apart. Wherever I went, he went. Wherever I was, he was. At first, when I was young, this was nice, and I enjoyed his company. But as I started getting a bit older, he started to become somewhat of a nuisance. The older I got, the more of a pain in the ass he became. It got worse and worse until I realized I needed to do something. At first, I tried to reason with him, to improve him, to fix him, to make him understand the error of his ways, to persuade him to change, to be different from who he was, to show him exciting new adventures. I had no luck. He didn't change. After many efforts, I realized I had no choice but to get rid of him. I told him to leave, but he refused. I tried different measures to make him go, all to no avail. Finally, totally frustrated and desperate, I knew I had no choice. I had to kill him. I sought for ways to accomplish this, but my mind had no solutions. Then one day, as we were standing by a big, deep, open well, the opportunity presented itself. A sword appeared in my hand. I raised it and swung it with all my strength and chopped his head off. His head fell backward into the well. I looked into the well and saw his head falling down, facing upward. Our eyes locked. I watched as his head fell into the water and disappeared. I woke up from the dream, fascinated. I rarely remember dreams vividly, but I thought, that was really interesting. I need to remember this dream. So I fixed it in my mind to try to make sure I would recall it the next day. I fell asleep immediately, and went right back into the same dream. But this time, I was inside the head, falling backwards down the well, face upward, my eyes locked with the eyes above me. I felt terror. I'm going to die. Suddenly, as I looked into my own eyes above me, I surrendered and said to myself, fuck it. In that instant, I felt deep peace. All fear was gone. I felt myself fall gently into the water and vanish. No big deal. I woke up enthralled. 1 month later, I met my last teacher, and she held a sharp sword. So yeah, thanks. That's another short extract. And there's many stories like that in the book. So yeah, it's the book is coming out on March 7th, The Audacity of Freedom, A Journey of Spiritual Liberation. And now for the next 2 weeks or so, we have a pre-order for Kindle. If you'd like, you can pre-order it now for $3, and it'll be delivered to your device on March 7th. And because we can't do pre-orders of the paperback, so I still wanted to order it for as little as I could. So on March 7th, it will be, you can order the paperback for $7 for 1 week. Very cool. Thanks a lot for listening, and I hope you enjoy the book. Cheers. Peace.